Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing great. It's been a little while, but I've been a little bit busy. So, first of all, let me thank you so much for subscribing and liking my articles and my videos, and I appreciate that. And for the new audience, I hope you enjoy it and please subscribe. We have a lot to discuss actually, but I'm only going to discuss 10 minutes, so some will be a little bit more than less. I have always said, ladies and gentlemen, that go beyond the traditional Western media because the traditional Western media, and I'm not just talking about TV, but the sets, whether it's Washington Post, The Economist, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all of these, or even Fox, all of these individual entities have played a massive role in pushing for a war for the past 25 years in the obviously in the MENA region. And they always had the same perspective, right? The Israelis were winning, the Israelis are innocent. And so they push for that narrative that if you go to war in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria was the greatest thing. And they were all failed, every single one. So I always tell people if these individuals supported the war in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, in Ukraine, they were wrong there. They're even wrong now about Iran. And why is that important right now? Because I want to tell you what's going on in the traditional Western media and the non traditional Western media and the global south. There is vast difference in many ways in what you see. And so I think you should see both just to have a better perspective. And so we're going to start this morning with the assassination of Mr. Larijani by the Israelis. So the Israelis have claimed that we have assassinated Mr. Larijani. Well, okay, but who was Mr. Larijani? He was handpicked by Mr. Khamenei to do a political transition, an extremely brave man. He became extremely well known 5 days ago when he started walking on the streets of Tehran with millions of people as bombs were coming in. It wasn't lost on anyone, particularly on social media, in which they were showing the Israelis like Netanyahu and Ben Gvir hiding in bunkers while he came up and walked the streets, right, bravely. But for the assassination has military and political component. Militarily, no. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, we assassinated Khamenei and the Iranians are kicking our ass, which we will discuss briefly momentarily. But politically, he was ironically less hardline. So what you have now is that the Iranians are putting up more hardline. They're going to put up more hardline, say, forget about negotiation with the West at all. And that was important. But the assassination of Mr. Larijani has raised an important questions. Where are Mr. Ben Gvir and Netanyahu? Remember, about 5, 6 days ago, their homes were attacked by the Iranians, and the Israeli government and through the Western traditional media said, oh no, they're okay. Nothing has happened to them. They're perfectly safe. The problem is, no one has seen them. The only view you have of them, and in this case, Mr. Netanyahu, was a video made 3 days ago, which was disastrous, which fed the view that Netanyahu is dead. And the video entailed, glossy background, six fingers, the dates weren't matched, indicated to many this was an artificial intelligence video. And so when you don't have Mr. Netanyahu not seen live in 5 days, when you don't have Mr. Ben Gvir not seen alive in 6 days, it tells people they're either significantly injured or they're dead. So that has fed the rumors. Now, the Israelis realize very well this is a political war as well as psychological. And part of that psychological war has been that Mr. Khamenei's son has left for Russia. There are, all of these negative things that he's not healthy. But ironically, in the case of Iranians, it gives them more power. So, because when we assassinated Khamenei and the Iranians start kicking ass, and that is apparent in how our bases are completely destroyed. When you assassinate someone like Larijani and the Iranians are still hitting every day the bases, that gives more strength to the Iranians. And it gives a value that, hey, who cares? They're still kicking ass. And why is that, ladies and gentlemen? It's the psychological mindset of the Iranians, but also the Iranian strategy. The Iranian strategy is centralized and decentralized. Decentralized means, from a military perspective, if one group is killed, the other group goes automatically. So, for example, when Khamenei was killed, the groups that were in charge of Kuwait and Bahrain and Dubai, they just did their thing. If a spiritual leader is killed, someone else comes in. So they have people in line waiting for them. And what's important is that who's are being killed are largely either the theocratocrats, which the military, Iranian military, doesn't care for necessarily, or those who will have a little bit sense, they're secular, but a little bit more sense of, dealing with the West. And at the end, ladies and gentlemen, what you have now is really the military taking over more and more. And the part of the reason I think is because Israeli thinks if we kill the leaders, no one would be left and we could put our own. Now, it doesn't work that way, really, because they have so many people in line waiting, have been trained for 30 years that when one goes, one comes back, right? But it does nonetheless politically bears the question, where are Netanyahu and Ben Gvir? And I think if they do not show these people extremely healthy in the next 24 hours, it would really cement the perspective that they're dead or severely injured. So it would behoove the Israelis to do that. Now, what is going on militarily? The reality is that the Iranians are literally destroying. Yes, we are hitting the cities of Tehran, the capital, killing women and children. But the Iranians are massively damaging Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, all of these, and obviously Dubai. And all of these are important, ladies and gentlemen, because that's where our basis is. The fact that the United States has pulled its naval ship back to literally 2,000 kilometers, so the Iranians cannot hit. The fact that we are leaving, from a naval perspective, the naval base in Bahrain tells everyone, tells all the military strategists, we are losing this war if we have not lost already. And so, what you also have is that, ladies and gentlemen, the United States and Israel are running out of missiles. So, if you recall, I said the bases are more like a spider web, and the Iranians were cutting the spider web. So, militarily, we are losing. We have no access to our bases. We could only provide sources by air. But when you do provide sources by air, you can't provide gas and you can't provide food all the time. It would behoove to people to remember we have dozen military bases in Jordan alone. Not all of them are massive, small ones, but you still have people there. And so you have all of these bases that have to be fed, that have to be protected. So when you have like a dozen or so in Jordan, a couple of in Kuwait, you have a problem. So militarily, we are not winning. Economically, we said before, we are absolutely losing because remember, this was a war of attrition. And so when you have a war of attrition, ladies and gentlemen, it is a war that's going to damage you, damage you, damage you. Now, the oil has already gone up to, I think it's $105 or something. And so that's just the beginning because it really hasn't hit the American public. So financially, we're losing. That would leave only political because we think we're winning, we're assassinating these leaders, but we're not really winning because the world, with the exception of a handful of nations, are on Iran's side, right? We started the war, we did the assassinations, we started on hell. And so we, the United States and Israel, find themselves in an extremely difficult situation. And so the question it becomes, how long can this war start? Remember, we said beginning in one of my articles, if the war goes more than 2 weeks, United States will lose. And it has gone more than 2 weeks. And the reason was because the Iranians would drag it, would drag it, would drag it. And that's what they're intending to do. So you can assassinate one leader, another one pops up. You're playing whack-a-moles with the leaders. And so thanks to technology like this, people know all the time. So we find ourselves in an extremely difficult situation at the moment. Now, we can come back in a day or so, see what's going on, see if anyone has heard anything about Mr. Ben Gvir. Has anyone seen Netanyahu, right? He hasn't seen live in 5 days, so he could be seriously injured, and they don't want to show him until he's better, right? And that's a possibility, and that is a possibility. That's a possibility that many analysts are saying. That's why they did the video. But let's see what's going on. Thank you so much.